Hi. So today I thought I'd make a video because it's kind of a timely subject, and I'd comment a bit about the situation here in Japan with the Prime Minister Kan leaving office. So, as many of you probably already know, there's been a carousel of prime ministers in Japan over the past half decade. The results have had some profound effects on the situation. First, a slight digression into the decision making mindset of the Japanese culture. So, here in Japan, it's often difficult to make a decision, and that's mostly because the culture is built around others' feelings and perceptions. So, the goal here is not to intentionally offend others. I find an interesting example of the difference between, say, North America and Japan decision making would be as follows. Put 10 people in a group with the task of assessing the situation and coming up with solutions. In North America, you'll quite likely have 4 or 5, maybe even more, competing personalities all saying that their way is best. While in Japan, you'll basically get no opinions on the best course of action. So I try to look at it as the flip side of a coin. One isn't necessarily better than another, as you need basically two sides to have a coin, right? So, as an aside, after living here in Japan for some time now, I can tell you that this kind of concern has a lot of benefits, and you don't really have to worry about poor treatment by others. And manners are basically still in high regard. I mean, it's kind of a nice feeling. The exception being when you put someone behind the wheel of a car, then all rules and considerations go out the window. So, back to Mr. Kan's decision to step down. Here is the situation as simply as I can make it. Mr. Kan came into office after Mr. Hatoyama, the previous prime minister, left under a campaign contribution scandal. And money and campaigns and politics is nothing new. However, in Japan, it's more blatant. The important thing to remember is that Mr. Kan is somewhat of an outsider, and he had a terrible experience in his days as Minister of Health and Welfare in 1996, when bureaucrats in his department basically lied about the health standards of blood transfusions, and resulted in some people getting HIV through the national health care system, which resulted in Mr. Kan having to make a public apology. Now, a public apology here is a big, big deal. Since that day, I believe Mr. Kan has come to distrust government service workers. Now, whether that's right or wrong, it's completely not the issue. It's what Mr. Kan's decision to do about it, right? So now let's put this in the context of the Great Tohoku earthquake, tsunami, and the nuclear accident. So Mr. Kan is already distrustful of career government service employees, and basically he's left to fend for himself after this catastrophe. In fact, actually, due to a complete breakdown in communications, the national emergency system, for the most part, I shouldn't say that for the most part, but to some degree, didn't work the way it was supposed to. The system designed to go into effect in some instances sat idly by, while Kan's office struggled with the situation. It turns out that TEPCO, as well as perhaps some government officials in charge of energy policy, willfully or were forced to lie about the state of events at the plant in Fukushima. Gee, what a surprise. But through an irony, the manager of the plant was actually a fellow alumni of Mr. Kan's. And this is in a country where personal connections are paramount. The two men spoke on the phone multiple times during the crisis. Thus, Mr. Kan completely circumvented the entire reporting process and got the scoop directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak. It's at this point that Mr. Ozawa, who is basically a true insider kingmaker politician type with dirty money issues of his own, along with the backing of the bureaucrats who are now on the outs, right, left outside the decision-making loop at Mr. Khan's office, decide to push for a vote of no confidence. Remember, the important point here is not to offend, not to give the intention, which is what these people are accusing Khan of doing. So Ozawa himself actually, I believe, longs to become prime minister, and damn the consequences of how he gets the position. However, Mr. Kan survived the recall effort and decided at that point to champion an anti-nuclear stance from his position as Prime Minister of Japan. Like, wow, a guy actually went out publicly and made the call. I thought it was actually really interesting and a welcome change to business as usual. However, this upped the stakes. So now you have the energy business contacts that grease the wheels, the bureaucrats, the party boss in Ozawa, and their unsuccessful efforts to remove Khan. So now these groups also include or recruit the former ruling party into the minority ruling party into their decision making. So let me repeat that. The energy business contracts, the bureaucrats, the party boss, and the former ruling party, who is now in the minority, basically team up to try to take out Mr. Khan. So together, the four power groups applied enough pressure from inside the Beltway decision-making process so that effectively they were able to extract a promise by Mr. Khan to step aside after he dealt with most of the short-term after effects of the crisis. So what does that leave us with now? Well, there's basically a free-for-all with 5 men openly asking for the job of Prime Minister, with various people supporting their position. My bet is on Mr. Noda, who is currently the Finance Minister, just as Mr. Khan was Finance Minister before becoming top dog in Japan. So Japan has a lot of issues to deal with, but I think folks who are watching this video already know the elephant in the room is the debt level. And I believe because of that, Mr. Noda, the Prime Minister, is the best equipped to handle this kind of issue. Remember that unlike the USA, almost all of Japan's debt is owned by the Japanese people, and that domestic debt repayment is an entirely different creature than foreign or external debt is. You know, foreign external debt crises would be something like Argentina or Malaysia or Iceland. Just a really ugly endgame. But that's not the case here in Japan. I mean, the debt is huge, no doubt about it. But anyway, whoever becomes the next prime minister definitely has his work cut out for him. I mean, think about it. We have a profound lack of clarity on policy. We have a failure to make decisions. We have a 20-year-long recession. These all sit on the desk of the prime minister, not to mention a growing power in China, U.S. basing issues, the shrinking economy, unemployment, an entire region pretty much destroyed by tsunami, and then on top of it all, you've got the cherry of the nuclear issue in a country already dealing with, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And that's, in my opinion, just the short list. I mean, it gets worse. So a question I ask is, maybe who in their right mind would actually want the job of Prime Minister of Japan? I mean, seriously. Especially when it appears, the Prime Minister can't even make an executive decision without building a consensus. Is that any way to make decisions? So currently we've had 6 Prime Ministers in 5 years in this country. And my belief is that it'll soon become 7 Prime Ministers in 6 years. However, best of luck to whoever has the job next. Sayonara.